I sat there at my kitchen table in Houston staring at the letter in my hands. My fingers were trembling so badly I could barely hold the paper steady. The morning light was just starting to filter through the curtains, but I felt like I was sitting in complete darkness. My business. The company I'd built from absolutely nothing, sold, gone, without my signature, without my knowledge, without my consent, and the man who did it? James Carter, my business partner, the person I'd trusted with everything. Let me back up for a moment because I need you to understand how I got here. My name is Monica Williams. I'm 45 years old, and until yesterday morning, I thought I had my life together. I've spent the last 12 years building a small tech startup here in Houston. We specialize in inventory management software for small retailers. Nothing glamorous, but honest work that helped real people run their businesses better. I grew up middle class on the south side of the city. My parents taught me the value of hard work, integrity, and planning for the future. When my husband Peter and I decided I should start this company, we made sure we had every safety net in place. Life insurance to protect our family if something happened to me. Health insurance because medical emergencies don't ask permission before they arrive. We even got disability insurance and critical illness coverage because I'd seen too many families destroyed by unexpected diagnoses. I wasn't naive about business. I knew the risks. That's why I'd been so careful. But I never imagined the biggest threat would come from inside my own company. James Carter walked into my life 7 years ago. He was charming, confident, and had this way of making you believe anything was possible. He'd been in sales for years and claimed he could take my little software company to the next level. And you know what? At first he did. Our revenue doubled in the first year he joined. Clients loved him. I thought I'd found the perfect partner. I should have seen the warning signs earlier. There were the late-night calls he'd taken outside the office, speaking in hushed tones. The way he'd brush off questions about certain deals with a wave of his hand and that practiced smile. How he started talking more and more about quick wins and aggressive expansion strategies that made my stomach twist with worry. "Monica, you're too cautious," he'd say, leaning back in his chair with that confident smirk. "Real entrepreneurs take risks. You can't build an empire by playing it safe." But I'd always counter with what my father taught me. There's a difference between taking calculated risks and being reckless, James. We have employees depending on us. We have families to protect. He'd just laugh. That's exactly the kind of thinking that keeps small businesses small. My CFO, Rachel Brooks, saw it too. Rachel was in her 50s, meticulous with numbers, and had this sixth sense for when something wasn't quite right. She'd been with me almost from the beginning, and I trusted her judgment completely. About 3 months ago, Rachel came into my office looking worried. She closed the door behind her, which she only did when something was seriously wrong. "Monica, I need to show you something," she said, sliding a document across my desk. It was a sales contract for company assets, signed by James. But it wasn't just any contract. It was dated last week, and I'd never seen it before. "Where did you get this?" I asked. My heart started to race. "It was in the files James asked me to process for accounting. Monica, this isn't right. You should have been the one to approve of this. Both partners need to sign off on asset sales. That's in our operating agreement." I stared at the paper, trying to make sense of it. Maybe it's a mistake. Maybe he forgot to loop me in. But Rachel's expression told me she didn't believe that any more than I did. "Just keep your eyes open," she said softly. "I have a bad feeling about this." I should have confronted him right then. I should have demanded answers. But I made the mistake that so many of us made. I convinced myself there had to be a reasonable explanation. James was my partner. We'd built this company together. He wouldn't betray me. God, I was so wrong. That evening, I went home to Peter and our teenage daughter. We had dinner like we always did. Normal conversation, homework questions, plans for the weekend. Peter noticed I was distracted. "Everything okay, honey?" he asked, reaching across the table to squeeze my hand. Just some confusion at work, I said, forcing a smile. Nothing I can't handle. Peter had always been supportive of my business, even though he wasn't directly involved. He worked as an engineer at one of the refineries outside Houston, with a steady income, good benefits. We'd always been a team, balancing each other out. "Remember?" he said that night as we were getting ready for bed. "That's why we have all those insurance policies, life insurance, health coverage, disability protection. No matter what happens with the business, our family is protected." He was right, of course. We'd been so careful about that. Life insurance meant if anything happened to me, Peter and our daughter would be taken care of. The health insurance had already saved us during my daughter's appendicitis scare 2 years ago. The disability insurance would replace my income if I got hurt or sick and couldn't work. And the critical illness coverage would give us a lump sum payment if I was diagnosed with something serious. We'd even made sure our business had proper coverage. Business interruption insurance to protect our income if disaster struck. Property insurance to cover our equipment and office space. General liability insurance to shield us from lawsuits. I'd done everything right. I'd built my business on a foundation of careful planning and ethical practices. So why did I feel like everything was about to fall apart? The next morning, I got to the office early. James's car was already in the parking lot, which was unusual. He was normally more of a late arrival kind of guy, rolling in around 9:30 with a coffee and excuses about traffic. I found him in the conference room with papers spread across the table. He looked up when I walked in, and for just a second, I saw something in his eyes. Guilt? Fear? It was gone so fast, I almost thought I'd imagined it. "Monica, didn't expect you this early," he said, that charming smile sliding into place like a mask. "We need to talk about this contract Rachel showed me," I said, keeping my voice steady. "The one you signed without my approval." His expression didn't change, but I noticed his shoulders tense slightly. "Oh, that. It's nothing, really. Just some routine paperwork to clear up old debts. You know how it is. Sometimes you have to move quickly on these things." "James, our operating agreement requires both partners to sign. Off on asset sales. You know that." He stood up, walking around the table toward me with his hands in his pockets, casual, relaxed, like we were discussing the weather. "Monica, come on, you're making a big deal out of nothing. I was actually doing you a favor. There was an opportunity to restructure some of our holdings, generate some quick capital for expansion. I thought you'd thank me." My blood ran cold. "What do you mean, restructure our holdings?" He waved his hand dismissively. "Nothing to worry about, just some financial maneuvering. This is how business works at the next level, Monica. You can't be afraid to make bold moves." I felt my hands clenching into fists at my sides. "James, I need you to be straight with me right now. What exactly did you sell?" For the first time, his confident facade cracked just slightly. "I sold the company," he said quietly. "Well, I sold your share to raise capital. We needed to move fast, and you would have just slowed everything down with your endless worrying about risk management and safety nets." The room started spinning. I gripped the back of a chair to steady myself. You sold my share of the company? My share? The company I built. How is that even legal?" James had the audacity to look annoyed. "Monica, you need to understand. Times like these, you have to leap before you look. That's what separates successful entrepreneurs from people who play it small their whole lives. I was trying to help both." I thought about something I'd read once, advice about not being swayed by get-rich-quick tales. Real wealth, real success, comes from steady ethical work over time. James had bought into exactly the kind of dangerous mythology that destroys lives. "James, you committed fraud," I said, my voice shaking with barely controlled rage. "You forged documents. You sold something that wasn't yours to sell." He stepped closer, and his voice dropped to something almost menacing. Prove it, he said. You're so scared of taking risks that you've lost sight of what it takes to really succeed. Maybe this company is better off without someone so timid at the helm. I should have screamed. I should have called the police right then. Instead, I did something that probably saved everything. I said absolutely nothing. I turned around, walked out of that conference room, and went straight to Rachel's office. I closed the door and locked it. "Rachel, I need your help," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. "James just admitted he sold my share of the company without my permission. We need to document everything, quietly, carefully, and we need to do it right now." Rachel's face went pale, but she nodded immediately. "Tell me what you need." Over the next several hours, while James thought I was just sulking in my office, Rachel and I worked systematically. We copied every file we could access: email records, financial transactions, the original operating agreement, bank statements showing unexplained transfers, phone logs, everything. I remembered something Peter had said about our insurance policies. We had a waiver of premium clause on our life insurance, which meant if I became disabled, the policy would stay in force without requiring payments. It was a small detail, but it represented something bigger: the importance of planning ahead, of protecting yourself even in the worst-case scenarios. That's what I am doing now, protecting myself, protecting my future, protecting my family. "Monica," Rachel said at one point, looking up from her computer screen, "I found something. James has been in contact with a notary, someone named David Torres. It looks like they've been discussing how to expedite ownership transfers without proper documentation." My stomach turned. This wasn't just a mistake. This wasn't just James getting carried away with ambition. This was premeditated fraud. "Copy everything," I said. "Every email, every text message reference, every phone call log. We're going to need it all." As the day wore on, we discovered the full scope of James's betrayal. He hadn't just sold my share of the company. He'd taken out loans against company assets without my knowledge. He'd promised clients features we couldn't deliver, collecting payments for vaporware. He'd even set up a separate bank account where he was funneling company money. This wasn't a business dispute. This was systematic theft. Around 4 in the afternoon, one of our major clients called. They'd heard rumors about instability in our company and were thinking about backing out of their contract. That represented 30% of our annual revenue. I could feel everything I'd built starting to crumble. That's when I remembered our business interruption insurance. If operations were disrupted through no fault of my own, the policy would cover lost income while we sorted things out. I called our insurance agent immediately and started the claims process. "Monica, this is highly unusual," the agent said. "Business interruption claims are typically for disasters like fires or floods, not situations like this." "Read the policy carefully," I said, my voice steady despite the panic clawing at my chest. "It covers any interruption that prevents normal business operations. This qualifies." While I was on the phone, Rachel knocked on my door urgently. "Monica, James is having a meeting with all the employees. He's telling them they need to choose sides. He's saying that you're trying to hold the company back and that anyone who's loyal to you won't have a job much longer." I hung up the phone and walked out to the main office area. Sure enough, James was standing on a desk, literally, giving some kind of motivational speech to our 15 employees. Most of them looked confused and uncomfortable. When he saw me, his eyes narrowed. "Ah, Monica," he said, his voice dripping with false warmth. "I was just explaining to everyone how we're entering an exciting new phase of growth. Maybe you'd like to add something." I looked at the faces of my employees, people I'd hired, people whose families I knew. I'd been to their kids' birthday parties. I'd written letters of recommendation for their spouses. These were my people. "I'd like to say something. Yes," I said calmly. "James and I are having a serious disagreement about the direction of this company. I'm working to resolve it through proper legal channels. In the meantime, I want all of you to know that your jobs are secure. We have safety nets in place, insurance coverage, reserves. Whatever happens, you're protected. James jumped down from the desk, his face flushed with anger. "That's exactly the problem," he shouted. "Always playing it safe. Always worry about insurance and reserves instead of seizing opportunities. This is why some people build empires and others just maintain tiny fiefdoms." I didn't raise my voice. I didn't need to. "James, the difference between us is simple. You see our employees as resources to be exploited for growth. I see them as people with families who depend on them. You chase quick money. I build sustainable success. And you know what? That's exactly why this company will survive what you've done." I turned and walked back to my office, my heart pounding but my head cleared. Behind me, I could hear confused murmurs from the employees and James's sputtering with rage. That evening, Rachel and I stayed late, making copies of everything we'd gathered. We organized it all chronologically, creating a timeline for James's fraudulent activities. Every fake signature, every unauthorized transfer, every lie. Around 8 o'clock, my phone rang. It was Peter. "Honey, are you okay? You said you'd be home by 6. I took a deep breath. "Peter, I need to tell you something. James has been embezzling from the company. He sold my ownership stake without my permission. I'm gathering evidence to take to the authorities." There was a long silence at the other end of the line. "Are you safe?" he finally asked. "Yes, I'm with Rachel. We're being careful." "Do you need me to come down there?" "No, but I might need you to talk to our attorney tomorrow. This is going to get complicated." "Monica," Peter said, and I could hear the emotion in his voice. "I'm proud of you. You're handling this the right way, carefully, ethically, not sinking to his level." After I hung up, Rachel handed me a flash drive. "Everything's on here," she said. "Multiple copies. One for you, one for your attorney, one for me to keep safe." "Rachel, I need to ask you something. Why are you helping me with this? James could have made things very difficult for you if you'd stayed on his side." She smiled sadly. "Monica, I've been in finance for 30 years. I've seen too many people like James, charismatic, confident, convinced they're smarter than everyone else. They always crash and burn eventually, and they always take innocent people down with them. You gave me a chance when I was struggling after my divorce. You paid for my daughter's college textbooks when I was short one semester. You're the kind of boss people dream about having. There was never a question which side I was on." I hugged her then, both of us tired and scared but determined. The next morning, I called our company attorney, Marcus. No, wait, I need to use a different name. Our attorney, David Henderson. I explained the entire situation and sent him copies of all our evidence. "Monica, this is serious," he said after reviewing the documents. "We're talking about fraud, forgery, embezzlement. You need to go to the police today." "I know," I said. I was planning to, but I wanted to make sure I had everything documented first. James is smart. He'll try to twist things, make it look like a disagreement between partners. I needed proof. "You did the right thing," David said, "but now it's time to involve law enforcement. I'll go with you if you want." That afternoon, David and I went to the Houston Police Department. We asked to speak with someone in the white-collar crime division. They connected us with Detective Carla Nguyen. Detective Nguyen was in her early 40s, sharp-eyed and professional. She listened to our entire story without interrupting, taking notes and occasionally asking, clarifying questions. When I finished, she sat back in her chair and studied me. "Ms. Williams, I have to say, it's rare that victims of business fraud come in with documentation this thoroughly. Most people show up with nothing but their word against their partners. You've built a prosecutable case." "I learned from my father," I said. "Always keep records. Always have proof. Always protect yourself." "Well, your father taught you well," Detective Nguyen said. "Give me 24 hours to review everything and coordinate with the DA's office. We'll need to move carefully to make sure James doesn't destroy evidence or flee. Can you keep acting normal for one more day?" I nodded. "I can do that." That evening, I went home and tried to act like everything was fine. Peter and I talked through different scenarios, trying to prepare for what might happen next. Our daughter knew something was wrong but didn't push for details. "Mom," she said at one point, "whatever's happening, you're going to fix it. You always do." I wished I had her confidence. The next morning I got up early. I showered, dressed in my best business suit, and drove to the office like I had done hundreds of times before. My hands were shaking on the steering wheel, but I kept my breathing steady. I knew what was about to happen. Detective Nguyen had called me at 6 a.m. to give me a heads up. "We're executing a warranty at your office at 9 a.m., she said. "I wanted you to know in advance so you wouldn't be caught off guard." When I arrived at the office, James was already there. He looked tired, stressed. "Good. Monica, we need to talk," he said when he saw me. "This has gone far enough. I think we can work something out. Maybe restructuring the partnership, give you a smaller equity stake but a guaranteed salary. You'd like that, wouldn't you? Security?" I looked at him. This man I'd trusted. This man who'd betrayed me and my family and every employee who depended on us. "James, there's nothing to work out," I said calmly. "You committed multiple felonies. You forged my signature. You sold assets that weren't yours. You embezzled company funds. This isn't a business negotiation. This is a criminal matter." His face flushed with anger. "You're overreacting. This is just how business works. You're too naive to understand that sometimes you have to bend the rules to succeed." "No," I said firmly. "Success built on fraud isn't success. It's just delayed failure." At exactly 9 o'clock, there was a knock on the front door of our office. Through the glass, I could see Detective Nguyen and 2 uniformed officers. James went pale. "What did you do?" he whispered, staring at me. "I did what I should have done weeks ago," I said. "I reported a crime." The next few minutes were a blur. Detective Nguyen showed James the warrant. He tried to bluster, to explain, to negotiate, but it was over. "James Carter, you're under arrest for fraud, forgery, and embezzlement," Detective Nguyen said, handcuffing him. "You have the right to remain silent." The employees had all stopped working, staring in shock as James was led out of the building. He kept looking back at me, his expression a mixture of disbelief and rage. After they left, I gathered everyone in the conference room. "I know this is shocking," I began. "I know you have questions. Here's what I can tell you. James has been engaging in illegal activities that threaten this company's future. I've been working with law enforcement and our attorney to resolve the situation. Your jobs are secure. Your paychecks are secure. The company will continue operating." One of our developers, a young woman named Sarah, raised her hand timidly. "Monica, what happens now?" "Now we are rebuilding," I said. "We get back to doing what we do best, creating good software that helps real people. We do it honestly, ethically, and sustainably, the way we always should have." Over the next few weeks, the legal process unfolded. James tried to fight the charges at first, but the evidence was overwhelming. Eventually, he agreed to a plea deal. He'd serve time, pay restitution, and forfeit any ownership stake in the company. The business interruption insurance claim came through, covering the revenue we'd lost during the chaos. Our clients, seeing that we'd handled the crisis professionally and transparently, actually became more loyal. Several even increased their contracts. I had to take out a small loan to buy out James's share properly through the legal system, but it was worth it. The company is fully mine now. One evening, about 2 months after James's arrest, Peter and I were sitting on our back porch. Our daughter was inside doing homework. The Houston summer heat was just starting to break into something almost pleasant. "You know what I've been thinking about?" I spoke. "All those insurance policies we took out. The life insurance, the disability coverage, the critical illness protection, the business interruption insurance. At the time, they felt like they were taking expensive precautions, but they represented something more important." "What's that?" Peter asked. "They represented a mindset, a refusal to gamble with our family's future, a commitment to protecting what matters. James never understood that. He thought insurance was for scared people, but it's actually for responsible people. People who understand that real success isn't about taking crazy risks. It's about building something solid that can weather any storm. Peter squeezed my hand. You weathered this storm pretty damn well. I smiled. We weathered it. You, me, Rachel, Detective Nguyen, David, our attorney. Nobody succeeds alone. James forgot that, too. The case made local news, of course. Local tech entrepreneur exposes partner's fraud. Some reporters wanted to interview me, but I mostly declined. This wasn't about publicity, it was about justice. The one interview I did agree to was with a business podcast that focused on ethical entrepreneurship. The host asked me what advice I'd give to other business owners. 3 things, I said. First, trust your instincts. If something feels wrong, it probably is. Investigate. Second, document everything. Keep records, have proof. You can't imagine how important that becomes if things go bad. And third, build your business on a foundation of real protection, good insurance, strong legal agreements, ethical practices. It's not sexy, it's not exciting, but it's what separates businesses that last from businesses that collapse. After the podcast aired, I got emails from dozens of people who'd faced similar betrayals in their own businesses. Their stories broke my heart. So many people who'd trusted the wrong partner. So many people who hadn't documented things properly and couldn't prove what had been done to them. I started thinking about how I could help. Rachel and I created a seminar series for small business owners in Houston. We called it Building Protected Success. We covered everything from proper insurance coverage to red flags in business partnerships to documentation best practices. The first seminar had 15 attendees. The second had 40. By the 6th one, we had to rent a bigger space because over 100 people wanted to attend. One woman came up to me afterward, tears in her eyes. "Thank you," she said. "My brother and I started a restaurant together. He's been doing some things that worried me, but I didn't know how to address it. After hearing your story, I know I need to have a serious conversation with him and maybe bring in an accountant to review our books." "Do it," I said. "Do it now. Don't wait until it's too late." A year after James's arrest, I was invited to speak at a women's entrepreneurship conference in Austin. The topic was Surviving Betrayal in Business. Standing on that stage, looking out at hundreds of women who'd fought their own battles to build their companies, I felt something shift inside me. What James had done to me was terrible. It had hurt. It had almost destroyed everything I'd built. But it had also made me stronger, wiser, more determined to help others avoid the same fate. "Ladies," I said to that audience, "let me tell you something about trust. Trust is essential in business. You can't succeed without it. But trust without verification is just naivety. Trust your partners, trust your employees, trust your clients. But also verify, document, protect yourself. Not because you expect betrayal, but because you're responsible for more than just yourself. You're responsible for everyone who depends on your business." The applause was thunderous. After my speech, a younger woman approached me. She couldn't have been more than 30, with eager eyes and a notebook full of questions. "Ms. Williams, I'm about to start my own company with my college roommate. After hearing your story, I'm scared. How do I know I can trust her?" I thought about that question carefully before answering. "You probably can trust her," I said. "Most business partnerships work out fine. But here's what you do anyway. Get everything in writing. Have a detailed operating agreement that specifies how decisions are made, how assets can be sold, what happens if one partner wants out. Make sure you both have appropriate insurance coverage. Set up checks and balances in your financial system so no one person has complete control. And most importantly, maintain open communication. The second, something feels off. Address it. Don't let problems fester." "Did you do all that with James?" she asked. "Most of it," I admitted. "We had a decent operating agreement. We had insurance. Where I failed was in addressing the warning signs early enough. I saw red flags and explained them away because I wanted to believe in him. That was my mistake." She nodded thoughtfully. "Thank you. That's really helpful. As I flew back to Houston that evening, I thought about my journey. From that morning, I'd found the letter about the sale, through the investigation and evidence gathering, to James's arrest and prosecution, to where I am now. I'd lost my business partner, but I'd kept my company. I'd lost some sleep and gained some gray hair, but I'd kept my integrity. And I'd discovered a new calling, helping other entrepreneurs protect themselves and their dreams. My company was doing better than ever. We've hired 3 new developers and signed contracts with 2 national retail chains. Rachel had been promoted to COO, a position she'd earned more than earned, and I'd started mentoring young businesswomen through a local Chamber of Commerce program. Every week, I met with entrepreneurs who were just starting out, sharing what I'd learned about building protected, sustainable success. One of my mentees, a woman named Angela who was starting a consulting firm, asked me once, "Don't you ever get bitter? Doesn't it make you cynical about business partnerships?" "No," I said honestly. What happened with James was about his choices, not about the fundamental nature of business partnerships. I've seen amazing partnerships that last decades. I've seen partnerships where people genuinely have each other's backs. James's betrayal taught me to be more careful, but it didn't teach me to stop trusting. 2 years after the incident, I decided to write a book about my experience. Not a tell-all memoir, but a practical guide for entrepreneurs about protecting their businesses and themselves. I called it Building on Solid Ground, a guide to protected entrepreneurship. The book covered everything from choosing the right business partner to setting up proper legal structures to identifying financial fraud to understanding different types of business insurance. Each chapter ended with practical action steps readers could implement immediately. I didn't expect it to be a bestseller, it wasn't, but it sold steadily, and I got letters from readers telling me how the advice had helped them avoid disasters or identify problems in their own businesses. One letter in particular stuck with me. It was from a man in Chicago who discovered his business partner was embezzling. He'd used the documentation techniques from my book to gather evidence and had successfully prosecuted his partner. "Thank you for sharing your story," he wrote. "It gave me the courage to act when I discovered what was happening. I was tempted to just walk away, to let him have business rather than fight. But then I remembered what you wrote about how staying silent enables criminals to keep hurting people. I fought, and I won, and my employees kept their jobs." That letter reminded me why going through all that pain had been worth it. Around this same time, Detective Nguyen called me. James was up for parole after serving 2 years of his sentence. "The parole board wants to hear from you," she said. "They're interested in your perspective on whether he should be released early." I thought about it for a long time before deciding what to say. At the hearing, I stood before the parole board and looked at James for the first time in 2 years. He looked older, defeated. The confident swagger was gone. James Carter betrayed my trust, committed fraud against me, and endangered the livelihoods of 15 employees and their families. I began. What he did was wrong, and he deserved to be punished for it. That said, I'm not here to argue for or against his parole. That's for this board to decide based on his behavior and rehabilitation. What I am here to say is this: if he's released, I hope he's learned something. I hope he understands that real success doesn't come from shortcuts and schemes. I hope he uses whatever talents he has to build something honest. And I hope he never puts another person through what he put me through. James was granted parole a month later. I heard through mutual acquaintances that he'd moved to Dallas and was working as a salesman for someone else's company. He'd lost his entrepreneurial ambitions, apparently. I wished him well, from a distance. I didn't want him in my life, but I didn't wish him harm either. My daughter graduated high school that spring and decided to study business in college. She told me I'd inspired her. "Mom, the way you handled everything with James showed me what real strength looks like," she said. "It's not about being aggressive or taking wild risks. It's about being smart. being prepared, and standing up for what's right, even when it's hard. I cried when she told me that. Peter and I renewed our vows on our 25th wedding anniversary. During the ceremony, I added something to my vows that I hadn't said the first time. "Thank you for supporting my dreams even when they were scary," I said. "Thank you for understanding why I needed to work late, why I needed to fight, why I needed to rebuild. Thank you for being the kind of partner in life that I wish I'd had in business. I love you." There wasn't a dry eye in the room. My company continued to grow. We expanded into new markets. We hired more employees. We developed new products. And we did it all carefully, ethically, with proper protection in place. I made sure every new employee understood our values from day one: integrity, transparency, sustainability over quick profits, protection for everyone who depends on the company, and I made sure they all understood the importance of speaking up when something seems wrong. "If you see something that concerns you, tell me," I'd say during onboarding. "Don't assume someone else will handle it. Don't assume it's not your place. This is your company too. You have a right and a responsibility to help keep it honest." 5 years after James's betrayal, I was invited to give a TED Talk. The topic was the real cost of shortcuts. I told my story to an audience of thousands, both in person and watching online. I talked about trust and betrayal. I talked about the illusion of easy success. I talked about the importance of ethical business practices and proper protections. But mostly, I talked about resilience. When James sold my company out from under me, I could have given up, I said. I could have walked away, declared bankruptcy, gotten a job working for someone else. And you know what? There would have been no shame in that. Sometimes the best decision is to walk away. But I looked at the situation and I realized I had a choice. I could let his betrayal define me, or I could use it to refine me. I chose refinement. And that's made all the difference. The video of that talk has been viewed over 1 million times. I get messages from people all over the world who've faced similar betrayals and found inspiration in my story. But the message I want to leave you with today, sitting here in my office in Houston, running a company that's stronger than ever, is this: success isn't about avoiding failure. It's about how you respond when failure comes calling. Success isn't about never being betrayed. It's about not letting betrayal destroy you. Success isn't about taking wild risks and hoping for the best. It's about building something solid, something protected, something that can withstand storms. I trusted my partner and he betrayed me. But I stayed silent for a reason. Not because I was scared, not because I was weak, but because I was gathering the evidence I needed to make things right. And when the police arrived the next morning, I was ready. I was ready because I'd done the work. I'd documented everything. I'd built relationships with people who had my back. I'd put protection in place years earlier that I never thought I'd need. And because of all that preparation, that careful, boring, unglamorous preparation, my family was protected. My employees were protected. My company survived. So let me ask you something. Have you faced financial challenges in your business? Have you experienced betrayal from someone you trusted? Have you struggled with knowing when to trust and when to verify? I'd love to hear your stories. Share your experiences in the comments below. Tell me what you've learned. Tell me how you've protected yourself and your dreams. And if you haven't subscribed to this channel yet, please do. I share stories like this regularly, stories about real people facing real challenges in business and finance, stories about courage, resilience, and the power of doing things the right way even when it's hard. Because here's the truth. The world needs more ethical entrepreneurs. The world needs more people who refuse to take shortcuts. The world needs more people who understand that real, lasting success is built on a foundation of integrity, preparation, and proper protection. Be one of those people. Trust wisely. Document carefully. Protect thoroughly. And when betrayal comes, and sometimes it will respond with strength and intelligence rather than emotion and revenge, that's how you build something that lasts. That's how you survive. That's how you win. Thank you for listening to my story. Now I want to hear yours. What would you have done in my situation? Have you ever had to make a difficult choice between confronting a problem head-on or gathering evidence first? What advice would you give to someone just starting a business partnership? Share your thoughts below, and remember, subscribing to this channel helps me continue sharing these motivational stories that can inspire and guide you on your own journey to protected, ethical success. Until next time, stay strong, stay smart, and never stop building your dreams the right way. God bless you all.